Thank you. Are there any announcements?
Yes, earlier today, Springford Area High School senior Charlie Nawa was inducted as the newest member of the U.S. Army All-American Marching Band. Charlie was joined by his family, classmates, band instructor, school administration, and peers for this very special ceremony. Look for him during the 2018 U.S. Army All-American Bowl held Saturday, January 6, 2018, live on NBC. Thank you.
Thank you. Public to be heard on agenda items? Okay. Moving along to presentations. Mrs. Wellington.
Thank you. I surrender. Well, my evening started out in a unique way. I got out of my car, and the band's outside. And as I was walking by, Mark Thurston, who's the percussion director for our band, said, "Do you want a drum solo?" And the whole band, whole percussion section played for me. So I feel like a real celebrity. So I got off to a great start. So maybe it was a little of that left over. See if I remember how to work this. Most of the time I come and talk to you about the Arboretum, but tonight I'm here to talk to you about something else. Most of you recognize this picture. It's a famous Van Gogh Starry Night, but did I go the right way? There. Do you know this one? Or this one? Or this one? Well, most of our children have at least seen them and are familiar with them, and many of them even know facts about them. And here's why. Maybe. There it is. Whoops. Let me go back. Art Goes to School. Art Goes to School is a chapter of Art Goes to School of Delaware Valley. And Art Goes to School of Delaware Valley is a nonprofit volunteer organization that's been in existence for about 55 years. I tried to find out how long we've had a chapter, but I didn't think about it today, and nobody's quite sure, but it's been a long time. We know it's at least 25 years. And we also know that a couple of us that are here tonight have been volunteers with the group for 17 years. So we're part of this larger group that's all volunteer that runs art appreciation programs for elementary school students. It has 44 chapters in southeastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey, over 625 volunteers, and reaches 155,000 students, plus or minus probably 100 or two. Chapters are independent, but affiliated and work together. There are values to being part of the group because they provide training, materials, opportunities. They provide our portfolios of pictures for us and ideas to use in the classroom. We have the opportunity to go to lectures by experts and to visit museums under the auspices of the larger group. So what do? Our goal is to expose students to fine art paintings of all types: line art, oils, pastels, collage, photography, sculpture, from all over the world, things that are in museums as close as Philadelphia and as far away as the Far East, from all eras, from cave paintings to modern art, and all kinds of subject matter. We try and get the students to look at and appreciate different types of art. We also encourage them to form their own opinions and to say, I don't like the one on the right as well as the one on the left, or I like the one on the left because it reminds me of my little sister, or I like the one on the right because it reminds me of my aunt. We try and get them to think about them in the framework of their own experience. And we want them to know that they don't have to like it all, but they have to respect the opinions of their other students in the class. This is how we do it. We use reproductions from Arcos School of Delaware Valley. Each year, we get approximately 18 prints and 1 replica sculpture, small enough to carry. And the prints are of a size that we can carry them in portfolios like are shown on this photograph, but big enough so that when we put them up in the classroom, kids can see them. And we have some examples of this year's portfolio here. Yes, just make sure the board gets to see them too. These are some of my fellow volunteers. So as you can see, a variety of types and in a size that's big enough. Thanks. So how do we do it? I know after 17 years, I know something about some of those paintings, but certainly not about all of them. So the way we work is we learn about the paintings all through the fall. We meet every couple of weeks for a couple of hours on a Tuesday. And each of us has taken a couple of the prints and done research on them. We share what we learned. We don't expect even our members to remember everything that's presented, because we look at them more in depth, but we each glean a few facts about each of the pictures and have access to the information when we go into the classrooms. The other things we do are attend the lectures and workshops of the Delaware Valley organization, and we plan activities together that we'll do in the classroom. Then off to the museum. Oops, not that museum. We take the museum into the classroom. Every art class, K through 6, once per year. So the art teachers are present, but we are actually conducting the class. And from our feedback from the art teachers, they appreciate the fact that the kids get to see much more art appreciation than they have time for in the class. Those classroom activities start right after the first of the year. And our objective is to get the students to look at the pictures, discuss them during the classroom sessions, and we try and be impartial, instructive, and informal. So the kids, it's interactive in discussion. We also have activities that are geared to kids of various ages. And we have things like treasure hunts, and we have a grab bag for the little kids where they might get a plastic tree and say, find a picture that has a tree in it, and they go put it in front of it. So we're just trying to get them to look at things at this point. And this is who we are. Just ordinary moms and grandmoms, although we would welcome some pops and grandpops. And our expenses are small, and we're funded with contributions from the parent associations in the schools. And their contributions are, we don't ask for a lot of money. The money goes to maintain the portfolios that come from Delaware Valley every year. Prints get worn out, we get new ones. there are always new artists that we'd like to include and so forth. And it helps fund the lectures that we get to go to. We do spend a little bit on classroom teaching tools, but most of it goes into our dues. You know, I usually come with a commercial when I do a presentation, and here's ours. We need more volunteers. We have some of us, like us, who've been, two of us, Tanya and I, who no longer have kids. My youngest is now in 8th grade, youngest grandchild. Tanya's youngest is in college. But we love this, we love the kids, we love art. And by the way, my background isn't art. My background is engineering. So you don't have to know a lot about art to join us. You just have to be interested. You don't have to be a teacher. We learn together and we work things out together. And new volunteers have the opportunity to shadow current volunteers before they're ready to go into the classroom on their own. We divide the schedule up. We each take half a day when we can, whatever time we're able to volunteer, so it doesn't have to be a huge overload. So if you want to learn about pictures like Cubs' Massa Joe Direct, or Monet's Trade in the Snow, or Jenkins' Phenomena Cat's Paw Reach that we showed in the beginning, and share that knowledge with our students, we encourage you to join Art Goes to School. And if you aren't the one, as happened with me, my daughter got the information and she said, "Here, Mom, pass the word." If anyone wants more information, you can go to the Art Goes to School website or email us. It's rewarding. I can't tell you how rewarding. Every year when we have new volunteers and introduce ourselves, I tell them, if I have to give up an activity, there are a lot of things I'd give up, not the Arboretum, by the way, before I'd give up Art Goes to School, because it's a combination of growing yourself through the learning and the camaraderie of the group, and then being able to share that with the kids. One short story about sharing it with the kids. I was at Royersford Elementary School a few years ago, and we asked the kids what their favorite picture is. And this little first grader came up to me and said, "Mrs. Wellington," I said, "Yes." She said, "This year I told you I liked that picture. But last year I said the potato eaters, and I like that one better." And I thought, this kindergarten 5-year-old remembered this picture for a whole year and had an opinion. And to me, that was worth gold. So I thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If you would like to observe any of our classroom activities, we'd be happy to let you know what our schedule will be in the winter, because we start in January and run through till May to get in all the classes. Any questions?
I want to thank you all for what you do in volunteering, and I think it's ironic that, Gail, what you said, you're an engineer, and we talk a lot about STEM, that's changed to STEAM, and the influence of the arts in engineering, science, technology, and mathematics, and how important it is. And you're living proof of an engineer who's promoting art, and what you all do as volunteers in the schools to expose our children beyond what we're capable of doing with our teachers in the time of day it's a huge tribute, because we've often sat here as a board and talked about the humanities and how important it is to shape our students and the whole student, and this is exactly what you're doing. You're exposing some children who never would have the opportunity to understand this art or even see it, to open them up to a whole new world, and how close we are to one of the largest museums in the country, let alone the world, and to expose them to what is in Philadelphia too. So I don't know you showed a picture of the Philadelphia Museum, but do you get to the Philadelphia Museum?
Yes, we do. Some of our lectures are there. One of the things that I think is important is our art teachers do a wonderful job, and they find activities to include all of the students. However, not all of the students can achieve at drawing or painting or even the simplest art activities, but they all can have an opinion when they see art, and they can appreciate it. So I see it as a leveling and a chance for them to be able to realize that art is a part of their life, even if they can't draw. Art has always been a part of my life. It was so important that when I was at Northeastern studying engineering, and you didn't have to have special permission to go write in a museum. I would go down and sit in the Impressionist gallery to do my calculus homework because I needed to be reminded that numbers and math and science weren't the only things in life. So when this came along, it sounded like a great opportunity for me. 17 years later, they keep saying, Gail, don't retire from us. And as long as I'm able to be in that classroom for those 2 or 3 classes a day, I'll be there.
Well, I know I speak on behalf of all of us at this table, Gail, for your commitment, not only to this project, but to other projects in this district over the years. And you brought up the Arboretum, so I'm going to give you that plug as we sit here, but it's an art form too, and what you did to transform that and bring the beauty and the art of the earth and nature to the community and the children. And now, October 14th, homecoming, when we add the new mural and the artwork that's out there. And thank you for your continued support of the district and our community and everything that you do. So I know that we're all thankful for everything you do and continue to do. And I know you got at least another 40 years left in you to do this. So thank you very much.
I'll just add, Gail, that last year when my 10-year-old daughter was able to update her room to a, big girl room and had to pick a theme, she decided she wanted to make it into a museum because of her experience at Royersford Elementary with this program. And she has Monet, she has Cézanne, she's got all these different prints, but
But she has her own museum.
her own museum.
And she surrounded her life with
Yep,
them.
and one of the pictures is one, that she actually did in art class, and now they're framing for it. So she's got her work up there next to the other ones. It's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, it's not just me. This is just 3 of the other volunteers. We have, how many? 10 this year. We like to have about 14, so that's why we're recruiting. And as I said, people move away, people get full-time jobs and can't continue. And some of them come back. So we always keep kind of replenishing and training our volunteer pool. I really thank you for this time. To my knowledge, I don't think the board has ever had a presentation on this project. We're kind of quietly off doing our thing. So I thought it was about time you found out, and the fact that we need more volunteers gave me the perfect impetus. Thanks.
And again, I'd like to just give another plug to the Hillman schools that support this on behalf of the district, because I think it's important that this is another way that our Hillman schools get involved. And, as much as you said that it goes unnoticed as to what you do in this program, those funds that are supporting that program are somewhat unnoticed as well. And people don't realize, that there's hard work that goes into raising those funds that ultimately get distributed. And this is a very useful funding, and we're very appreciative to them for supporting this program.
As are we.
I'd like to give you another job if you have any spare time. I think.
Is your name Joe Cerisi? He's always finding me Joe.
Well, yeah, I know he's a pain, but actually, I think the fact that you were an engineer, you must have broken through a lot of ceilings in your. And I'm sure the history of your career would be very informative for a lot of our young female students to learn how they can also go into the STEM world and how you were able to achieve that. I think that would be a very beneficial program to have you make a presentation along those lines. If we could work something out for you
Sure. I'd
in
be
your spare
glad to.
time.
I have one success already. My granddaughter graduated from Purdue as a civil engineer 2 years ago. And she now designs heating and air conditioning systems for big commercial installations.
I'm sure you could be a role model for many other young ladies in this school system. So
Thank you. I'd be honored. Thanks again.
Thank you. Dr. Gooden?
Thank you, Gail. I know that many schools in the district have benefited from the Art Goes to School program, and we are very appreciative of all that you do and your group, and we wish you continued success in that. I want to take just a minute to recognize some of our board members. Our Pennsylvania School Board Association was founded in 1895, and it was the first state school board association created in the country for the purpose of serving those elected officials who serve on school boards and representing the interests of public education. The PSBA has been recognizing the contributions of dedicated local school directors with long-term service since 1983 by conducting what they call an honor roll. And it's their way of saying thank you to those individuals who exemplify leadership by giving unselfishly of their time and talents for the betterment of public schools, serving students across the great Commonwealth. And so it gives me immense pleasure to recognize some of our board members this evening for being part of this legacy. We'd like to start off with the 8-year honor roll recognition, which goes to Mr. Thomas DeBello. We also want to recognize, and we'll get a picture of you guys. And we'll also we also want to recognize Mr. Joseph Cerisi for his contributions for the past 12 years.
Only 3 years.
And then lastly, we want to recognize our longest-serving director, or current, is Mr. Bernard Pettit with a 16-year honor roll of school board service. I didn't think it called that.
Well, Bern was there in 1893. You founded the PSBA, didn't you?
You guys will come right out here. We'll get a picture of you.
He stands for Pettit.
The 3 of us together.
Yes. Thank you.
8, 12, and 16, that's about our mentality. We got 16. Thank you very much. Moving along to reports, curriculum and technology.
Thank you. The Curriculum and Technology Committee met on Tuesday, September 5th. The good news at that time was that school opened successfully with an inspiring convocation. On the curriculum side, for the ELA update, during the summer, K-6 work concentrated on updating and refining the assessments and the report card guides. 7 to 12 focused on assessments and ensuring course maps reflected all grade level core standards. The department is continuing to reflect, review, and refine all grade levels, but will work specifically with 8th grade English this year. On the math update, the summer work was completed to ensure that all 5 through 8, as well as Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry, curriculum, documentation, assessments, and pacing were ready with the new resources and shared at the opening of school. So that was a great accomplishment within the math department in the curriculum area. The coaches and Mrs. Rockland are continuing to work and support the teachers utilizing the new resource. Virtual PE. 3 of our health and PE teachers worked to create a virtual PE classroom on Google to allow our students who needed this flexibility to take this course. They are finishing this first quarter, and we will be monitoring it, curriculum will be monitoring it to see how it goes, and this could be the model for future courses in this relationship. Young adult literature reading list. They worked with the new teacher for the young adult literature class, revised the curriculum and documentations to get in line with the newer course. They reviewed the novel list and felt it was important to update them, and 2 novels will be used that never were used before, and they were reviewed and vetted by the teachers and the curriculum department to be deemed acceptable. The pre-K update, pre-K readiness program was conducted and ran from July 10th through August 11th. There were 21 out of 26 students who attended the program, that were offered the program during the 2 sessions. Mrs. Gardy and Mrs. Bass visited the pre-K classroom on several occasions to monitor and support the program. A parent survey of the program was conducted, and the parents indicated that they were very satisfied with the program and thankful that the district provided this type of initiative. In February, the curriculum department would like to advertise the dates for the 18-19 program as tentative, pending, of course, approval. There's been some long-range planning that's being done for the Modernized Learning Project 9 to 12, and they're working on a 5-year plan to fully implement the program in a reasonable manner. This plan considers human and other resources as well as cost projections. The full plan has not been shared with the committee, but once it has, I will continue to report on it. In technology, there was a lot of new equipment and summer projects. They had rolled out over 2,000 new devices, 100 access points, and 10 switches at the Flex. All of this is to support the new machines as well as existing devices. They developed and deployed Casper management system for all mobile devices, and the last project, which is still being worked on, is phase 1 of the 600 projector refresh. 120 were to be installed the week after the meeting, which is 2 weeks ago. Secondly, we talked about the camera refresh for 9 to 12, and that is that there was $200,000 for cameras that was earmarked for 2016, but the project never happened. The quotes have been received, or Bob was working on getting quotes, and they'd like to get that for the Flex building to give them a more robust system and start looking at cameras potentially for the elementary school. The quote was received, and this is a new agenda item tonight under program and curriculum for the camera replacement contract for Simplex to remain under the $200,000 budget item. 200, was that the number? Yeah, 200, thank you. Okay. The last thing that was discussed regarding technology was the need for a phone system in the near future. There's been money put aside each year for this, and to make sure that we have it when the time comes. This will most likely happen within the next year or 2. Mrs. Splitzer asked to investigate the option of a no phone system, and Mr. Castellano asked if there were other districts moving to that system, and a few said they looked into it, but really it isn't currently feasible. One issue is you would need new teachers to use personal cell phones in a scenario like this, which was one of the roadblocks. For the curriculum and technology initiatives with the high school project, the contracts with TLS, which was on the agenda and approved in June, is ready to go, and training has already begun, and we will continue to keep you posted on that project. And for hybrid, we're off to a great start, and also keep you posted. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 3rd, 6:30 in the district office. Any questions?
Is the technology organization going to look at Skype for business for the replacement of the phone system?
I don't think he heard you. Bob,
Guys, yes, have you looked at Skype for Business as a replacement?
have you looked at Skype for Business for a replacement?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Have I looked at?
Yeah, Skype for Business. That a lot of businesses are going to that for their phone system. I was wondering if that's something you're considering.
I investigated that as well. It's something I looked into as Ms. Fetzer had asked. And a couple other districts had looked into something like that to eliminate the phone system. And the 3 different vendors I spoke to said that there were a lot of headaches along the way, and they think that's a little bit too aggressive at this point. It's something maybe in 3 to 5 years it might be an option, but at this point there's a lot of hurdles you'd have to go through to get to that point.
Anyone else? The only comment I have, and this has been a small pet peeve of mine for the last few years, is that, and I know Mrs. Fern has looked into this for me many times, is our hold. I'd like to see if we can get our own message on our hold. I'd like to see if we can get our own kids with their music on our hold. I'd like to talk about the upcoming events in the district when people put on hold. I hate listening to the radio station or Muzak, so I'm wondering what we have to do to get our band, our choir, our orchestra, a recording that's public domain that we can put on our hold music, or pay a licensing fee, a minimal licensing fee, and put it on, and then talk about next Thursday at 3 o'clock will be the district-wide art show. Don't forget, it's, you know, the next football game is Friday at 7 o'clock at Coach McNally Stadium. So we just keep it, the brand going, even on our hold music or our hold. So I don't know if you can look into that. I'm sure it's possible.
How much time do you spend on hold?
Doesn't matter how much time you spend.
I know.
Well,
just-
when I call Mrs. Fern, it's about a good 15 minutes. Right, right. She doesn't even answer, just goes, oh, I hear the music go on. Yeah. All right, then, moving on. It's so nice to be loved. Okay, whatever, I'm moving on. Community relations.
Well, we can't top that. But we did meet last week before the work session on September 18th, and the first thing that we discussed was the naming of the RCTV studio. It will be named the Steve Bonnet's TV Studio in honor of Steve, and that dedication will take place on January 10th, 2018. We also talked about past events. Royersford Community Day was a successful day out in Royersford. RCTV debuted the trailer and invited community members to participate in a quick interview. Broadcast Major 2 students conducted the interviews, while Cherry and Andrew quickly packaged that interview so that participants could watch an instant replay. So it was great exposure for the trailer over there at Royersford Community Day. Additionally, the trailer has already been on the move, visiting 3 off-site locations and producing 3 home games. Upcoming district-wide events, there is an Alice Information Night scheduled for October 2nd, 2017, which I believe is a parent night that evening. We'll provide great information that night, and based on what the students have already been informed about. Homecoming, October 14th, along with the Arboretum dedication, as we discussed briefly when Mrs. Wellington was up there. I believe that begins at 12 o'clock p.m. that day for homecoming. The Snap Wizards game is scheduled to take place on October 22nd, Parent Camp on November 4th. Oaks will celebrate their 50th anniversary this year on November 5th, and there is a math night scheduled for November 6th. So that's an overview of the events that are going on and that the Community Relations Committee is highly supporting. Anybody have any questions?
I don't know if I think it's great that we're naming it Steve Bonnet's. I don't think we need to stick TV in there because there's more going on in there than just TV. So I think Steve Bonnet Studio is just serves a good purpose.
Okay, I will take that back. Yep.
Okay, moving on. Western Center.
The Joint Operating Committee of the Western Montgomery Career and Technology Center met on September the 11th. The school director, Chris Morrison, gave his report, mentioning that on the morning of September 11th, there was a commemorative ceremony with the local police, fire departments, and students doing a ceremony commemorating the events of 9/11. The ceremony was covered by at least one of the Philadelphia television channels. On October 19th, there's going to be a fundraiser for the Skills USA program, spaghetti dinner at $8 a person. So this money is used to send the students to participate in the Skills USA competition. So please try to support that event. And the ever-popular community dinner buffet night is coming up on November the 6th with a Thanksgiving theme presentation. And more importantly, on November the 15th, there's going to be a Girls' Night Out event. The purpose of the Girls' Night Out event is to introduce young girls to what we would consider non-traditional career opportunities that are offered by the Western Center, such as working in automobile repairs and other things that are generally not considered traditional career directions for young ladies. That will take place from 5 to 6 with the students and parents interested in that, and then there'll be a tour from 6 till 8 o'clock on November the 15th. Then on November the 29th, there's an open house for the public, and that goes from 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock. And then a new type of event on November the 30th, they're going to have a high tea. And if anybody's ever been to a traditional British high tea, you know what a fun event that can be. So put that on your calendars. No, seriously, it's a great time. I mean, if you enjoy eating lots of sweets and things. There's also a report that the HVAC system at the Western Center is in need of some major repairs. I think it's of the order of $30,000 or something along those lines, so that's going to be a major hit. There is an active shooter drill scheduled to take place on October the 28th, a training drill. After Mr. Morrison's presentation, Dr. Gooden mentioned that there's a discussion going on between the 3 school districts on the entry requirements or criteria for all the districts entering into the Western Center programs. Following Dr. Gooden's presentation, Mr. Winnick, the school principal, gave us a detailed enrollment report. Just a few of the numbers you might be interested in. Total number of students is 533 students. Of that 533, 135 are from Pottsgrove, 173 from Upper Perk, and 225 from Spring-Ford. So we certainly have a large number of students there. Of that 533, 291 are in the AM, or the morning program, 242 in the PM programs. And finally, those of you that watch the Little House programs on television, the Little House that they're working on is supposed to be ready in November. I don't know whether we'll be invited to have a sleepover there or not, but if they get the cable TV in, maybe we'll take them up on it. But that's finally supposed to be finished in November. This is probably the longest a Little House has ever taken to be built, but it's going to be a very nice project, so hopefully it will be open to the public to see the nice work that they've done. That's the end of my Western Center report. Any questions?
No, I just wanted to comment on, you said Spring-Ford has, what, 235, you said?
225.
225. You know, it just goes to show what hard work over the last couple of years. When, you know, just eight short years ago, we had roughly 100 students there. And I know that was one of our missions here in Spring-Ford, was to promote the advantages there are at the Western Center as well. And I think that us getting our numbers up to 225 is amazing. I'm glad that the students are taking advantage of the opportunities that are there. There's many wonderful programs, and I'll tell you, the kids that leave there have a huge opportunity as well as having very successful and lucrative careers. So, I mean, that's great, and everyone that was involved in promoting and putting strategies in place to move that enrollment forward should be commended.
I think a lot of credit goes to Mr. Chris Morrison, who has introduced some really interesting new programs there that have attracted a lot of new students with great career opportunities.
I don't disagree, but there is a whole movement before he was even on board. So I think
That's
that
true.
over the years, I think many could be thanked for getting Springford to take wide advantage of the school there.
Thank you. PSBA.
Just one item I wanted to mention that's in the election coming up in November. There's a constitutional amendment that's going to be on the ballot. The purpose of this amendment is to, I guess, the way I see it, take a first step towards eliminating school property taxes. Because currently, the Constitution of Pennsylvania caps homestead exclusions at 50% of the median assessed value of all homestead properties. So in other words, if they want to eliminate the property tax, they have to amend the Constitution, and this would be the first step. So that is going to be on the ballot in November. And the proposed amendment would allow the General Assembly to make it theoretically possible to entirely eliminate property taxes on all owner-occupied residences. However, this theoretical possibility can become a reality only if there is another source of revenue that could replace all the taxes currently being paid on account of the homestead and farmstead property. So in other words, you can't just throw away the home property tax without having some other tax already lined up to replace the money that's going to be lost from that. So anyway, that's something to consider in the November election.
I've been an advocate sitting at this table for several years about the whole property tax reform bill and talked about the issues and the problems that are associated with it. But I know, Mr. Fink, if you, or Mr. Fitzgerald, I think that although, Mr. Dressler, you're not too far off the mark, I think there's a misconception of what the question is on a November ballot, which is not, it's not a good question. It shouldn't be supported no matter what, but it's given the illusion that it could be the first step, and in reality, down the road, it could be a first step towards property tax. But it is really more associated to the homestead. And the biggest issue with it, and then I'll let Mr. Fitzgerald explain what really, what's really the attempt of this, is that the state currently today isn't even funding the first 50% of the homestead, whatever you want to call it, rebate or whatever it may be. So how they're going to, and again, there is some belief that this is just a political ploy set up for next year's elections as well. But this is not necessarily geared towards or has anything in the short term related to property tax elimination.
I agree, and my understanding, and it's limited with regard to the referendum's question, is it was limited to that of the homestead exception. The other issue is that to eliminate school property taxes does not need to go through, say, a constitutional convention or an amendment to the state's constitution. It can come through statutory change. I don't think that the state legislature, in all their wisdom, would want to go down the route of constitutional amendment when they can do it through statute, which is easier.
But if the Constitution caps the homestead exclusion at 50%, how are you going to eliminate the tax if it's...
Well, but that's a different question. That's a different issue which may require more of a constitutional issue. The elimination of property taxes, a blanket elimination, modification, can come through the act of the two bodies of Congress.
Even though it's contrary to this constitutional cap.
Yeah, the issue is that if they eliminate property taxes, it has to be both commercial and residential property taxes. So if they did that, then the part that the commercial properties pay would have to be picked up through other taxes.
Right, I mean, what the
That's
Constitution
the
talks about
issue.
is there's a uniformity component of the Constitution with regard to taxation. So we
Right.
cannot treat commercial taxpayers or senior taxpayers potentially, or individual property owners differently. There has to be a uniform method of taxation. That would have to be addressed through a constitutional change if we were to deviate from the uniformity clause of our state's constitution.
So other states can do these things, but we have this uniformity condition.
One of the issues with, it was one of the bills last, keeping up with these bills, one of the bills from last session discussed the issue of potentially eliminating, it was going to be, I think, precluding the ability for commercial taxpayers, or they were going to be treated less favorably. It was, I believe, the Harper Amendment. I think there would be questionable constitutional issues with saying, all right, we are going to truly treat commercial taxpayers in a less favorable way than homeowners. While it might sound good on paper, there would truly be an issue of running into a constitutional issue on that.
So this amendment, supposed, according to the PSBA, is to enable future tax reform legislation. What would be the nature of that reform?
I would have to look at more of the history of how that referendum got to the ballot box, and certainly there would be an issue as to who's pushing that. But I don't know what the implications would be in terms of the specific
Right,
question.
and again, it goes back to, there was constitutional change when they put the homestead in place. And when they put the homestead in place, the homestead rebate in place, they set a 50% cap on assessed value, no, a 50% cap on reimbursement. And so and again, the reason why this isn't, forget about property tax reform, this is how stuff gets all mingled into it. The biggest issue with this is that the state currently is not properly, it can't even meet the 50% conditions that they put in place. They're over $2 billion in debt, and now they're putting in another layer to potentially sit there and say, well, now we can have a homestead. It's a ploy. It's getting the voters to be excited about that they're possibly doing something when they haven't passed the budget. They're over $2 billion in debt, and they have no way of doing property tax reform. So they're masking it over with this constitutional change, trying to make people believe that they're actually doing something for the good of the public when they're not even funding the first 50% of what's already in place today. That's what's going on. And the reason why it needs to be voted down is because it provides no value whatsoever to the community at large.
If my recollection serves me correctly, maybe Mr. Fitzgerald can correct it, that it was Act 1 around 2005 that when the homestead was put in place, to take full advantage of that, each school district had to pass an income tax to replace the property tax that went away. And I don't think hardly any districts chose to go the increased income tax route. They all chose to keep basically what they've had with the property taxes.
They virtually every district I know passed the resolution through the Act 1 process in 2006. Correct. Yeah.
And that was just districts, and there was, that act set up a tax commission that each district had to have, and I was on that commission, where that commission had to study it and come up with a recommendation for the school board, and then the school boards heard the recommendation and went off, and I think basically for the most part, no district really changed. Springford obviously didn't, and I don't think hardly any districts, if any, changed their property taxes and replaced a good chunk of it with an increased income tax.
Well, now that my head hurts, let's move on to it.
No, all I was going to say is that, here we are at the table where we're all very involved and nobody 100% understands what they're trying to pass. So people who are not so much involved in the public, how are they supposed to understand this referendum? And like Mr. DeBello said, it's a smoke and mirrors move to say, look, we're trying to get rid of your property taxes, but your school district keeps wanting to raise them. We've talked about this over and over and over and over again, that we have a state legislator that's put a state almost $3 billion in debt and still has no funding for this year's budget. The Senate just voted down 47-3, the funding that the House came up with. And here we are at the end of September, and we've often said that by June 30th, we must have a budget that has equal funding and equals out the spending and funding. Yet the state of Pennsylvania legislators still don't. They still get their salary, and they still get their benefits, and they still get their pension. But we were told that all of us could be thrown off of the school board who volunteer if we don't have a budget in place by June 30th. So my point of all this is to say to the public once again, you need to hold your elected officials accountable. And when they don't hear from you, and they don't hear you say anything to them, they think what they're doing is right, or they are not funding education. We only get, how much, Mr. DeBello, Mr. Fink, about 19% from the state, roughly?
17.
This year, 17?
17%, right?
Some districts are 95%. And the first thing they go to cut when they go into these budgets is education. Why don't we trim a little here, a little there? It's time that we hold them all accountable. And I don't care what party we're not talking about party, we're talking about elected officials. They need to hear from every single person in our district and beyond that they need to do their job. Number one, fund the budget, and more importantly, for all of us in this room, fund education properly. And if you really want to reform property tax, do something for the senior citizens who have been staying there for years like other states do around the nation, and figure a way to reduce their property taxes and the burden on them. Put a referendum in like they're doing this one. It would have to be a statewide referendum to change the Constitution. All right, enough on my soapbox. We'll move along.
I'd like to add
Go
one
ahead.
other thing, and that is, while we continue to sit without a state budget, and once they finally do approve this budget, if they make adjustments to whatever the education funding is, it does not allow districts to go back and change their budget. So now our budget has been approved. We have to live by it, breathe by it, and die by it. And if we don't get that funding, am I correct in stating that we are not able to make changes to our budget based on that? So we will, as a district, if we get less money, need to find ways to make up those differences, which holds us even in a tougher position than, others do.
Under the law, you can reopen the budget I'd have to look to see if there's a threshold number, but with a late budget and if there's changes that it can allow for us to theoretically reopen. I don't know of any district that ever, even 2 years ago when we had an impasse for like 200 days, I don't know of any district that really reopened their budget, but that option is available.
There is a state budget. It's just that the revenue portion, there's a shortfall in the revenue portion that the legislature has been debating as to how to cover that with what kind of taxes or additional cuts. But there is a state budget that was passed. I think it was even on time, but the flaw was it didn't fully fund.
Not if you're going to hold payments back come September, which is what they've been saying.
They did come up with a budget. 100% they came up with a budget. But we could all come up with a budget, and we could all want to go buy the Ferrari and say we're going to buy the Ferrari, but without funding, you don't get the Ferrari. I mean, that's what they did. They came up with a fictitious number and said, oh, we got a budget. But we don't know how we're going to pay for it. So, yes, theoretically there is a budget, but they can't pay for it. And we're seeing again that Pennsylvania was just downgraded from Standard & Poor's, and the date now has been moved to the end of the month, that if they don't have a funding mechanism, Pennsylvania will not be able to borrow any more money and will probably run out of money, which, even if we can reopen the budget, will affect our students, our staff, our community. So they're putting us in a horrible place. But our state legislators can all say, we came up with a budget. Great. And we can come up with something fictitious too, and not have a way to figure it out and say, oh, look, we have this. So again, from a public perspective, please contact your local officials, because not only do we not have a funding mechanism, but I'm sure Mr. DeBello may bring this up sooner than later, within the next month and a half, 2 months, we have to start on next year's budget. We don't know if we're going to get what we've been promised for this year, and here we go again for next year.
And again, we have to be careful with words. The only thing that's been passed to date by the state is an expenditure budget. That's it. They've been going back and forth as far as the spending portion of the budget. They have no spending. It's not that there's a short or a deficit in the budget. They have no spending plan. So they know that there's somewhere between, they haven't zeroed in on a number, but they know that there's somewhere between $2 and $3 billion short. And that's going to ripple forward. And I brought this up at the last meeting when I gave the Finance Committee update, that education funding in Pennsylvania makes up roughly about a third of the budget. So just think about simple math. If there's a $3 billion deficit and they got to cut a third, and a third, you could pretty much start to predict how much they're going to have to cut out of education to get to some type of balanced budget, or they're going to have to do something different at the state. And related to opening up the budget, this board has all the power to open up a budget. We may not change the budget, but the state will force us into cutting back on expenses, which we can legally do. And if we have to cut things mid-year to find the funding, that's what we have to do. That's why it's extremely important for everyone to reach out to their legislators and tell them to stop going to the chicken dinners and all the little things that they're getting their face in the newspaper to show like they're doing something, and tell them to get back to Harrisburg and get a funding mechanism in place, because education is going to suffer. We're already ranked 48th in the state, and we're going in the wrong direction.
But we're ranked 48th in the nation as Pennsylvania.
You're right, I'm sorry.
Not Springford, the
Right,
state
the
of
nation.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania's
Yeah.
ranked 48th in the nation.
All right, moving on. Mr. Dressler, is there a superintendent evaluation report? I don't think so, but,
No. Go.
yeah, we did that already. Legislative committee will skip. MCIU, Mr. DeBello? Funding, 48 for funding, Pennsylvania's ranked. Is there an MCIU report?
No, the meeting is actually tomorrow night.
Okay. Superintendent's report?
Thank you, Mr. Cerisi. Want to remind the public that our homecoming activities will be taking place between October 10 and 14th, culminating on Saturday with our community parade, our football game, and later that evening, our homecoming dance for our students. And that will be October 10th through the 14th. We also, over the next couple months, will be conducting our lockdown drills, our armed intruder drills throughout the district, K through 4. We have been notifying parents and working with our local police officers to make sure that we're ready to start conducting those drills. And then lastly, we continue to look for, and this is kind of a commercial, but for those of you, if there's anybody out there in the community that has an interest in driving a school bus, I know a company, as well as probably nationwide, there is a shortage for bus drivers. And so if you're interested in that, please contact Custer's Garage, and I believe they can put you on the right track for a nice part-time job. Thank you.
Thank you. What about, Dr. Gooden, is there an update, or you want to share anything from the last few weeks for the opening of school? Some of the great things that we've been doing this year? Some of the programs and stuff. I don't know if you and Dr. Roach want to just touch on that quickly. Usually we get a report by this time.
Can I defer that to next month?
Defer it. Dr. Roach, you have anything you want to share?
No, not at this time.
All right, then. All right, Mr. Fitzgerald, do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, just very briefly. As some of you, most of you are probably aware, the district received last week another right to know request from a gentleman by the name of Simon Campbell. To the extent that you have any interest at all in this issue, every district is receiving these requests. There was one this past May, which the district responded to in June, and this most recent one that came out about a week or so ago. So the target generally isn't the district per se. It's another issue generally dealing with the Pennsylvania School Boards Association. You might recall Mr. Campbell was seeking information a number of years ago that was looking for information as relates to teacher information, stop teacher strikes. His focus most recently has been the PSBA. If you have any particular questions about it, certainly come up to me afterwards, but at this point, boards are probably wondering what's going on with that, so I just wanted to alert you to those issues, and the district will respond to this most recent request.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the minutes. We have A and B. Is there a motion?
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Personnel, we have A through I, but there's a slight change to A3. It should say 2018, not 2017. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Finance, we have A through F. Wait, there's a change on F also. It should say per week. So with that, is there a motion? Mr.
I was going to just explain, funding will be paid from the special education budget and shall not exceed $525 per week, correct?
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Property, we have A and B.
Separate B.
All right, so let's take A. Is there a motion for A?
Motion.
Is there a motion, Mr. Pettit? Mr.
So
Gonzalez,
moved.
second. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And B. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments? You have a question?
No, it's my understanding, and Dr. Gooden, you can confirm, that by approving this motion, B, should it be approved, that would have this matter proceed through the bidding stage, and that the next step for the board would be bids would be brought back to the board.
That's my understanding.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Program and curriculum?
Second.
I didn't even tell you what it is. A through K. So it's the first and a second. Any questions or comments?
No, it's not. It's only A.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I didn't even see that. Why do I have K there? All right, so I was wrong. Program and curriculum, A. There's a first and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Conferences and workshops is A
So-
through K.
So second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Other business, A through D. Is there a second? We need to vote on,
Yeah, that has to be a selection, I think.
well, go ahead. You want to say the names, what this is?
I don't know these people.
Ed, do you have any recommendations since you're the PSBA liaison?
This is a note to PSBA. Once again, it's sort of like your investments when you get the proxy in the mail and they tell you to vote for all these people. There should be a presentation that's given to every board member, or a video presentation, or what these, there's a quick little thing they give you, and we're supposed to vote on who these people are without even knowing who they are and how they're going to represent us. So
What you could do, I've seen other districts, they've actually given ballots to the board members, and then it's provided to the secretary of the board, and then it's announced publicly what the balloting is. That might be easier, because I think there's a background with these individuals that could, that
can we do that, or do we have to vote on it tonight?
I think my response to PSBA is due. I have had the bios in the board memo the last
Yeah, I know. It's
several
just,
weeks.
I did see it. It's not you. It's just that, once again, yeah, we read about them.
So who do you recommend, Mrs. Fern?
Yeah, who do you recommend?
I was on hold. I would
Did you
So
like our
maybe
music
if-
on hold?
If their bio would have been on hold, we would all know, because I'm usually on forever.
Good.
Yeah.
They vote for the treasurer and the insurance trustee. There's one person running for one office. I mean, that's not even an election. So it's really down to
Well,
so
let's
who's
make a
going to
motion.
run for president
Let's make a-
and vice
Let's make
president.
a motion for C and D, or no, wait, need to select two. Right, so C and D,
Yeah.
right.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And A and B, we're just gonna not make, no one will make a motion, so then we don't vote on it.
I make a motion that we pick the first one in both A and B.
Oh, that was great.
Very scientific. I learned from Gail, her engineering degree.
Is there a second?
I just want to say the only person I've ever known on these elected positions got thrown off for some sort of misbehavior.
Great, Ed, that's really a great endorsement of this.
Yeah, really.
That's great. Okay, well, we have a first. Is there a second? Questions or comments? The only comment I have again for PSBA is that they need to be more involved in informing, coming out to board meetings. And we've sat at this table for years and even thought about not continuing in PSBA because of how ill-informed we are most of the time. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Board comment. I have a quick comment. I picked this up. It's the Perkiomen Valley School District Community Education Brochure, and years ago we tried to do a community education program here in Springford. I don't know what happened, why it wasn't successful, but Perkiomen has been successful for a long time. I think O&J has one. I don't know if Methacton has anything anymore, but they may have had one. A lot of the districts do, and someone recently said to me, a senior citizen, that these programs are great because it allowed our senior citizens into our buildings also to see what they're paying for. And I'd like to ask the board if, once again, we could look at the idea of these community classes and look at why we failed the last time it wasn't successful, and maybe not reinvent the wheel, but go to our neighboring districts and ask them what they're doing.
We had a program that was discontinued, I think it was around 2009 or 10 when there was a budget issue. And, but we'd had one for many years.
That's what I said. I remember we had it, but I didn't know
and
why
that's why it got
stopped.
eliminated, because of the big budget crunch when the recession hit.
Well, maybe we can relook at it again and see how they also made it through there and come back with a recommendation. Anyone else?
Maybe that should go to community relations.
Yeah, well,
I think we could take that back and look at that in community relations, because we have talked about how we can reach the seniors. And I know, too, Limerick Township puts out something, I mean, they have their website and all of that, you can look at all kinds of information on there. But they also put out, I guess it's monthly or maybe seasonal, where it does give you the highlights of what's going on in the township. And it seems like that would be something similar, but to keep people informed that maybe aren't tied into the internet as much as the rest of us are.
Well, this is different.
this is educational programs, like photography or art or, there's a bunch of them. And we did have a program here for at least 3 years, I think it was. And
It was a couple,
was it 5 years?
it was,
I don't remember.
I think when I was in high school, I think they even had it.
Yeah,
It was
and then
10 years ago.
it just didn't. It didn't take off anymore, and I don't know what happened. I really don't. So, my recommendation is that we look back into it, and then we go to other districts that have been successful with it, and see how we can utilize it. Any other board comment?
But Colleen does bring up a good point. We used to send out community newsletters and all that. I don't know, that kind of dropped off. I guess we only send out, the annual report now? Or do we even send that out? I know, but there's a lot of people that don't have access to that information overload that's on the websites and stuff. I'm not going to give a percentage because I don't know. But it could be something we could look at as well, making sure that we're getting the information out.
I sent Mr. Cerisi and Dr. Gooden and Dr. Roach information about a program that I'd like to have some of our science teachers and students get involved in, this pulsar detection program that they're going to be running a training program for, again, through Penn State and West Virginia University. This is a real, honest-to-God research program that our students can be involved in and give them training in how to actually do research. This is not a make-work kind of thing. This is a real scientific program that they can become involved in, and we need to have some teachers who will help guide the students through this. And Mrs. Bass has the information about that, and it's being passed on to
It already has been.
the appropriate.
It's already been passed on.
Has it? So hopefully we can generate some interest in this, because I think it's a tremendous opportunity for these students to, I think open some doors to them in terms of where they go to college and maybe research programs that they could be involved in when they get into college. So please, if you know of any students who have scientific interests, try to encourage them to take a look at this pulsar detection program. So, pardon me?
What grade level?
I think it would be probably junior and senior level high school.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public to be heard? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.